All right, our other headline topic tonight takes us elsewhere in the country. Indiana Governor Mike Pence has just signed a law that some detractors claim could sanction discrimination against gay people. According to the Star Tribune, the measure, which takes effect in July, prohibits state laws that substantially burden a person's ability to follow his or her religious beliefs. The definition of person includes religious institutions, businesses, and associations. Neil, this question's for you. Has Governor Pence just set the Republican Party back 20 years and doomed his state, or did he stand for the right principle in this case?
So, you know, this is one of those, and this is what I love about modern politics is the either or, right? Because that's how you phrased it is very similar to how, you know, a reporter would phrase it if they were talking to somebody. And I think the way I like to look at it is that the greater challenge is in this whole area of personal liberties. I feel like that the problem is, instead of just not passing any laws and letting people act the way they want, so long as they don't discriminate the right or abridge the rights of others, we've added law on top of law on top of law on top of law. Now we have this Jenga stack of laws now, and any new thing that gets put on top of that just seems to make the whole thing even shakier. And I guess for me, part of me wants to say, look, if you want to, and I think I've even seen some examples, and I don't know if they're real or not, because, you know, the internet is, believe it or not, is not always right. I've seen signs where people have already said, you know, gay stay out or gay's not welcome. And it's like, you know, part of me says, yeah, it's fine. Hey, if you want to be a bigot, if you want to be, you know, anti-gay or homophobic or whatever the term is, put a sign up. I'd love to know. So, because I may not patronize those as a straight person. I mean, I feel like that this continues to get at the root issue of all these laws is that homosexuals want to be able to get married and Christians want to be able to live their religious beliefs. And the problem is, instead of letting both do what they want, both are trying to pass laws to hurt the other, and it seems like that's kind of where we're at. So I didn't really answer the question, because to me, it seems like that there's so much more to the issue than that.
Well, I think you're right, and part of the reason why I phrase questions in that manner is to give you the opportunity to point out how stupid the question is. So glad you were able to do that.
Wasn't my intent, but.
But no, I mean, you're right. That is, and I was intentional in the way I phrased that question, because that dichotomy is the way that we tend to the prism that we tend to look through things. It's always a binary choice between this or that. And you're right. This issue is much more nuanced and multifaceted, and we need to adjust our approach to it accordingly. Karl, what do you think the potential is for something like this to manifest here in Minnesota? We did have, because I read today that people have been pointing out that Indiana's law is not unlike many other laws that have been passed in other states. And apparently the crucial difference that has really sparked this particular protest is the fact that Indiana just became a state where gay marriage is legal. I don't know how long ago they did, but it was in relative proximity to this law being passed. And so this law is seen, and probably is, a reaction to that, and in that context is being perceived as a license to discriminate against people. Now here in Minnesota, it wasn't that long ago that we joined the growing number of states where gay marriage is legal. So do you see the potential for this, if Republicans were placed in a position where they could actually control the agenda, where this kind of law would manifest?
Well, that's exactly the problem, Walter, is this issue has been co-opted by the gay marriage debate. Because this is no longer an issue of freedom of association or an issue that there's other non-binary ways to look at this issue. This issue is Christian bakers discriminating against gay couples. And that's what people think the issue means and is all about, rightfully or wrongfully. There's obviously that component to it, but I don't think in Minnesota we will have the opportunity to look at that issue because how closely it's tied to gay marriage. I know Michigan's looking at the same religious protections and things like that, the religious laws. But I think if we look at this issue from a constitutional aspect and from a human rights component, not only the right to sell whom I want to, but also the right to buy from whom I want to as well. If we looked at it from that perspective, then I think there's reasons why we definitely should move forward with a law like this. Not that we need to codify people's inherent rights, but I think that we can reframe the issue from being either you're pro-Christian or you're pro-homosexual. You're one or the other. And obviously, we all think it's never that simple. And we libertarians think that the government, one, shouldn't protect religious classes, and two, shouldn't protect any class, ultimately. There should be no group of people that have special protections over another, and that's kind of a scary and a taboo thing to talk about these days. But if we really want to talk about a constitutional-friendly, minimal government, we shouldn't be looking at special protections for anyone. But here in Minnesota, we passed gay marriage, and I think it's right to have equal protection under law for all people, regardless of race or color or group. So I don't think a law like this would pass in a bluish state like ours. But yeah, that issue has definitely been co-opted already, and it's only been a law for what, less than a week now.
Yeah, it's really, to me, it's kind of sad, because you're right, and both of you alluded to this. This really is about freedom of association, and the thing about free association, it's like freedom of speech, right? Freedom of speech only matters in a context where the speech is offensive. And it's the same thing with freedom of association. Freedom of association only matters in a context where you object to how somebody is utilizing their freedom of association. And we've gotten to a point in our culture, both in the social culture and the political culture, where we no longer, at large, we no longer seem to accept that people have a right to be offensive, that people have a right to say things that are offensive, to make choices regarding their associations that are offensive, to control, utilizing their own judgment, their own values, the relationships that they enter into. And that whole point is completely lost in this debate that's going on over the Indiana law. And I think part of the reason, and you highlighted this, Karl, part of the reason is because it is a religious freedom bill, right? You're singling out religion as the qualifying aspect, the context in which liberty or freedom matters, when in point of fact, it shouldn't matter whether your reason is religious or not. It should just, what matters is you're an individual, you own your life, you own the product of your labor, and you get to decide what relationships you enter into and on what terms. And whether your reasons are motivated by religion or reason or complete and utter nonsense, irrationality, bigotry, whatever, is completely beside the point. It's your right to make those choices. And the integrity of that argument is undermined by focusing on the religious aspect.
Right. And, you know, it's something interesting, too. You know, they're fighting this battle when there are so many other battles to fight. As an example, on a side note, in California, you know, they have their citizen ballot initiative process where you get enough petitions and you can get anything on the ballot. There's actually a ballot initiative that I believe crossed the threshold called, and I'm not joking here, the Sodomite Protection Act, and it's a law that basically says you're allowed to kill gays. And it got 325,000 signatures in California. And someone told me about it, and I couldn't believe it. And I read it, it's there, it exists. There was a huge controversy over it. I mean, if there are groups that want to fight this, if this is their biggest battle to fight, I think there's a lot of different and better battles to fight elsewhere in that regard.
Well, and Walter, I think to your point on fighting words that you made recently, if we have the right to boycott any company or any group of people, saying, I'm not going to buy from Chick-fil-A because I don't agree with their religious principles, then why doesn't the seller have the right to boycott individuals on whom they want to sell to? It's a two-way street, or should be a two-way street, to see if people don't want to voluntarily buy from a person or from a company. That's their right to not buy from that. Elton John is boycotting Dolce & Gabbana. Great, go for it, Elton. You know, don't buy from the product that you don't think the company represents your values. At the same time, the seller should be able to say, these are our values, and this is who our market is, and this is who we're going to sell to. But it's never that two-way street. It's always Christian versus non-Christian, and I think that's a really dangerous a dangerous dichotomy to place on issues like this, which are really a lot broader and a lot more complicated.
Yeah, well, I think what Chick-fil-A should do is they should compel other chicken restaurants to remain closed on Sunday. Doesn't that make
I think we should be open on all chicken on Sunday. Not Monday. We can't sell chicken on Monday, but Sunday we should get chicken.
You guys are starting to sound like the Republican Legislative Caucus, where you spin the wheel to determine which mandate you're for.
Yeah, exactly.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to the RLC Minnesota YouTube channel. And if you'd like to join the fight for individual rights, limited government, and free markets, become a member of the RLC at rlcminnesota.org.